And of course, let's stay with developments around this particular story, but we'll also be looking at the ANC that is also under the spotlight here. You'd remember yesterday, only 2 women made the list of the names vying for the ANC's top 6 position. And this, of course, is expected to be the battle, that will unfold at the party's national conference to be held in Johannesburg next month. Now, NEC member Nomvula Mokonyane and General Manager at Luthuli House, Febe Potgieter-Gqubule, will battle it out for the Deputy Secretary General position. And this is a stark contrast to the party's rules that have been released ahead of this conference. Let's speak now to political analyst, Professor Booysen. Prof, thank you so much for your time. Let's just start with the story that we've just come from now, Balentle, at the Joburg Council. Of course, we know that there's a motion of no confidence that is coming up again, the second one in 2 months again against Mayor Mpho Phalatse. She seems to be unfazed, saying the numbers are on her side, but we've seen some serious ructions within the multi-party government. Do you think she's safe?
I think it is absolutely unpredictable in this coalition in Johannesburg, as it is in several other metros around the country, where there's such a fine balance of power between the parties. There's really a tyranny of motions of no confidence. And now we've also seen how budgetary approvals is being used to tilt the balance of power and to test the balance of power. We know in Johannesburg, out of the 270 total council seats, any alliance, coalition of political parties needs that 136. And the DA and its multi-party alliance has got 130. Guaranteed, unless, as we saw in September, there are sudden defections by members of small political parties, like it was from COPE and IFP, etc., at that time. So it is so unpredictable, and it really renders out local government, not just in Johannesburg, but generally in South Africa, to monthly whims, where these motions can be brought at any time, basically in any month of the year. Unlike in Parliament, where there are certain monthly periods, like in 6 months before a motion of no confidence can be reintroduced. So it's a lot of instability that is elicited through these power struggles between the alliances as to who must win power in the next month. And governance is probably suffering in the process.
And Prof, I was going to go there because she does say that she would like things to be done the way they always are in Parliament, where you have to wait a certain number of months before you can bring back a motion that would have failed. I suppose then she might be correct in your view, if I'm listening to what you're saying, that this might bring some kind of stability in council.
It would certainly help bring stability, yes. Now, much also depends on how astute and how wise these political parties are in putting together their programs and in perhaps winning over some of the other parties and creating a stability outright, a coalition that has an outright majority.
Before we even go to our ANC conversation, I'm keen to hear your thoughts on what we've just heard. The president talking about, the work that is going to improve Eskom, and yet, of course, he's finding himself in that country. Right now, we're still battling with, ramped up rolling blackouts.
Indeed, I was struck by the lovely tone of optimism and envisioning so much of a better future with railways, electricity provision, general energy generation that's really working. And I was just thinking there is such a huge gap between what South Africans on the ground are experiencing and the processes that he talks about that are happening, that the government is doing. So that gap between doing and experiencing is huge. And I'm sure in his deliberations with this British investment community, talking about market access, etc., I'm sure in that he will be challenged and asked about timelines. How long would investors have to wait in order to have assurances of electricity that will be there, of alternative forms of power generation that will be enacted, of railways that will be working, infrastructure that is reconstructed, many things that are simply just working, that are currently not working. He would have to be very persuasive to be able to tell them, convince them that the timelines can match any investment that comes into the country.
And Prof, looking at another issue, of course, the ANC, yesterday we saw, the pronouncement around the candidates that are now going to be vying for the top 6 positions. And I mean, when you look at the rules that have been released by the Electoral Committee, they're clear. 50% of nominees and elected members must be women. But it's only 2 that we are seeing competing for the Deputy Secretary General position. Where are they?
Yes, that's a big question. And those two, one will be elected. Of course, it is possible that there could still be an alliance or new nominations from the floor. But knowing how politics and ANC politics works, those such candidates are unlikely to be successful. So this is probably one position out of the 6, the situation that South Africans will have to deal with in the ANC. We know after the previous ANC election 5 years ago, there was a huge amount of upset and promises that the one position, then it was the late Jessie Duarte as Deputy Secretary General, the same position, coincidentally, that is now coming to the women, that would be improved. And yes, the question is, what's happening, what is not happening in the ANC? And I think the systematic build-up and opportunities, empowerment of women, and that is not happening. And I think from women's side too, women themselves should also assume responsibility, not go in, as we've seen some young potential leaders did, say we bring youth in and assume that would be enough. We saw some women coming in saying, we are women candidates, that you must elect us. That is not sufficient. For women to be taken seriously in politics, they have to be able to bring something in particular, something that will show they connect with people, connect with the masses, something that will show they can do governance excellently, and something that will also show that they can network with all colleagues, including male colleagues in a political domain, and be, whether you like it or not, if you want to be in politics, you have to be a politician, and show that they can be effective politicians. So I think women also have to look at themselves and bring their part to the deal.
And talking about women and looking at themselves, Prof, how much of what we're seeing now in terms of just these 2 candidates and what we've seen in the past can be put on the doorstep of the state of the Women's League? I mean, listening to Nomvula Mokonyane, for example, in conversation with Natasha Piri, my colleague here at the SABC, talking about how the Women's League also over the years appears to have been weakened. They, found themselves fighting battles that they should not have even been fighting, instead of championing the fight for women themselves. And you look at who they've nominated themselves for president. It's President Cyril Ramaphosa. It's not a female candidate. It's only a deputy for female candidates. So how much of this can we also put on that doorstep?
The Women's League is such a wonderful instrument that could have been so effective in doing so much. But they have not played their game. They have, in some instances, simply not elected the right dynamic leaders. They've not had perhaps the right aspiring dynamic leaders to be able to deliver the whole package and to make sure they push women to the center of the political stage. We know there was many contests within the Women's League after previous Nazareth, as to whether they should have backed women candidates more seriously. And there were so many divisions in that Women's League that they couldn't agree on that. And we've also seen the Women's League, how they have linked themselves to be a vehicle for opportunistic, ambitious candidates here and there, but not ensuring that these women are going to represent the case of women well, or would even roughly be appropriate candidates to try to do that. So there's so much that has to be done and corrected on that front. Women's League remains potentially a great instrument, but they will have to look at how everything is geared towards getting in the right women and pushing those women to the top, helping them to the top so that they can be effective politicians.
And Looking at the state of the ANC right now, do you think that this is a women's league? I know there's a task team right now, but is this a league that can be saved and be as great of a vehicle as you say it's got the potential to be?
I really think it has to be reconstructed from quite low down. There are many worthy people in there. We haven't seen them develop full potential. Are they interested to develop their full potential? But I think a lot of reconstruction is necessary and probably building it up from scratch.
All right, Prof, thank you so much. Do appreciate your time, and thank you for bearing with us and also, taking the punches there with the news story that was coming in. Do appreciate it. That is Professor Susan Booysen, a political analyst.